First things first, I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. Sorry, I took a day off yesterday. Had to be sick one day. I am back. I am better than ever. I got to watch us. We look great from my bedroom. Just wanted to let everybody know that.
No problem. Hubs won $600 from the staff.
Why?
The calendar we have of the next day Jenna's sick, he was the closest to it. Pool starts again today. Meeting after the show.
Maybe it's the company. I don't think I was sick one day at my last job.
Okay. Well, you're just taking the sickness from all of us then collectively for you, but we're great to have you back.
I'll take it upon me. We got a big show today. Seahawks.
I was sick all the time my last job. that's why I was left. I was sick of them.
The Seahawks silenced the Vikings on Monday Night Football. Jerry Jones is ready for a Super Bowl run, but we will start with the final game between two of the greatest of their generation. LeBron James and Dwayne Wade reunited, and it feels so good. Heated Lakers first quarter. LeBron beats D. Wade off the dribble. 2 of his 28 on the night. We go to the fourth. Wade gets the layup, and that cuts the Laker lead to 1. He had 15 points. Heat would go on a run, but LeBron pulls the Lakers within 1 with that dunk right there. Less than 10 seconds to go. Lakers up 3. LeBron guarding who else? Wade, and Wade can't get the shot to go. Fitting that the two were guarding each other at the very end. Lakers win this one 108-105. Both got a little emotional after the game.
Like I've been saying all week, it's bittersweet, man. Every possession, you was just like the next one is getting closer and closer to the last one. So a lot of emotions going on right now for me, just knowing I'm losing a brother in this game that I've had so many wars with, so many wars on each other together and separate. So there's no better way than to end in the Staples Center, man. And this is my guy, man. This is my guy.
D-Wade, we talked about it this morning. Last night you had a glass of wine about this game, how big it's going to be as competitors. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's tough. You know, this is what you play for. Playing against one of the greatest players ever. Whether we was teammates, whether we was opponents, we brought the best out of each other. And I'm just thankful that I had the opportunity to be able to be drafted at the same time as this guy. And the friendship that we have, you guys know that's beyond basketball. But I'm going to miss this, you know? Like, I'm going to miss out of this, man.
Nice to see, nice to hear. What was your reaction to LeBron and Wade's final matchup last night, CC?
My reaction is two, because I'm a big fan of Dwayne Wade's. Being a resident of South Florida, had season tickets for the Heat before Dwayne Wade got there, back to the Alonzo Mourning days, watching them win a championship before LeBron got there. So I've always been a big fan of Dwayne Wade, seeing him since they drafted him from Marquette, seeing him make an impact on the league, take over a franchise. And he's the king in South Florida. You know, it's they call it Wade County after Dwayne Wade down there in Broward County. So it's been a pleasure to watch his career. But LeBron stated when he left Cleveland and went to Miami, he went away to college. And a lot of times when you get out of the home and away from your parents and you go to college, you meet people that really impact your life, and you have relationships and a brotherhood or a sisterhood that continue on for a lifetime. And that's what LeBron did when he met with D. Wade. Collectively, between the two of them, they have 6 championships. Both of them have that one championship by themselves. Dwayne Wade, when he did it before he partnered up with LeBron, and LeBron when he went back to the land and delivered that championship a couple years ago. But also, ultimately, I believe LeBron James is going to own an NBA basketball team, and I believe Dwayne Wade probably will be a part of that contingent that might do things with him. They have a unique connection. Their families are well connected. They spend so much time off the court together. So, and as you can see with LeBron doesn't get emotional about a lot of things. He's left Cleveland twice, didn't get emotional about it, but you could see right there that Dwayne Wade, among all the players he's been close to, that's Bosh, and that's being
Chris Paul,
Melo, all those guys, the champ, all those guys. He's got some unique relationships, but Dwayne Wade has meant something special to him. And I believe also because Dwayne Wade was such a good basketball player that he challenged LeBron. He could do things that LeBron couldn't do, and it takes a special person to win a championship for a franchise and then tell a guy, I'm turning the franchise over to you.
Well, that's the key. Dwayne Wade was a made man before he and LeBron teamed up. And LeBron was an all-time great before they teamed up, but a disappointing all-time great as far as winning. D-Wade had one of the greatest NBA finals ever in year 3. The first year LeBron was making it to the postseason. Dwayne Wade already had it. And then when they did team up together, their first year together, it ended in LeBron's single worst professional moments, the series against Dallas, most notably the last 3 games. And this is where I don't think Dwayne Wade gets enough credit, because I don't know how much Dwayne Wade needed LeBron at that point.
At that point.
But LeBron desperately needed Dwayne Wade, because Dwayne Wade could have there said, you know what? Here's how we're going to win titles. It's not going to be you and me take turns, and it's not going to be me handing over the reins to you. It's going to be me, the champion, the guy of Dade County, Wade County, who's going to take over, and you're going to have to take a back seat. And instead, Dwayne Wade set his basketball ego aside, his professional ego aside, and said, despite what happened in Dallas, you're the best player on the team. Everything's got to run through you. And from that moment forward, it's that stretch of now 7.5 years that, in my eyes, has made LeBron James the greatest player ever, that has allowed LeBron to win 3 titles in the last 7 years. D-Wade had a chance in that offseason and in the beginning of that next year to change basketball history, I think, for the worse, but maybe for his own ego for the better. And he didn't do it. And what they have done, and D-Wade also, his ability, when LeBron left Miami, cost D-Wade $10 million. And D-Wade said, don't care. Even if he cared, he took that up with the Heat, didn't let that come between their friendship. And for those two last night, it was a perfect ending. LeBron guarding him, then the ball, and then them two hugging at the end. It was a great ending for 2 of the 3 best players of their era. And it was awesome to see, and it's a shame it's the last time we'll see it, because this is going to be the last year of D-Wade's
It's
career.
such a unique relationship the 2 have had. You mentioned that he did get so emotional. Why do you think it brought LeBron to almost tears to be able to, play with Wade, know Wade all these years, and then basically say goodbye in the basketball fashion to him last night?
Because it's one thing as a professional athlete for people in your family to be close to you, but for another guy who has a skill level that's comparable to yours and has achieved things like you on the court, there's a connection because there's an understanding. We talk about things all the time. You guys ask me questions, and I try to give you really insightful stuff, but it's really hard to get the whole meaning unless you've been there, unless you've walked it with it. And when you're able to walk side by side with a person, then you're able to feel and/or the input that you're able to give them, because Dwayne Wade also, he changed his game from a driver, high riser, to he had to work on his shot to be able to clear more space for LeBron. So those connections right there, and all the things I think that LeBron saw him, and LeBron doesn't have a bigger brother. But Dwayne Wade was that bigger brother. Sure. Dwayne Wade went to college. So even though, they came into the league the same time, Dwayne Wade was older and had a different type of maturity. Dwayne Wade was a father at a very, very young age. So those types of things, I believe, led to LeBron in the outpouring of emotion.
We look at these 2 guys, and everyone's like, oh, LeBron's a much better basketball player. But how would you put Dwayne Wade's career into perspective for people that have not been following him nearly as closely as they followed LeBron?
All right. So these are, I just think, undeniable facts. He's the 4th greatest shooting guard ever, behind only Jordan, West, and Kobe. And the analytics folks would put him ahead of Kobe. I can't do that. He's unquestionably one of the 20 greatest players of all time. He's an 8-time All-NBA guy, a 13-time All-Star. He won a scoring title, won a Finals MVP in year 3. And that Finals, they were down 0-2 against Dallas. In the next 4 games, Dwayne Wade averaged 39, 8, and 4. In 45 minutes per game. Dwayne Wade is an all-time minted great. And because his career really, he became great in year 2, and really by about year 11 was done being great. So, and we've now seen in recent memories, getting to the deterioration of Dwayne Wade. People shouldn't forget the 5 years before LeBron and he teamed up, he averaged 28, 6, and 6 in the playoffs, 27, 5, and 7 in the regular season. He was in the discussion for 2nd best player in the world when LeBron and he teamed up, which is what created what a lot of people consider the first super team, which now obviously has become the trend in the NBA.
Very selfless. See, he signed all those great little things to LeBron. LeBron didn't write jack to Dwayne Wade. Obviously, that's what stressed me out the entire segment, but we'll talk much more about that. And we'll get much more into their relationship. They had some times along the way where they could have split up and they remained friends, so we'll get to that. We'll take a break, though. Coming up, what has gone so wrong for Kirk Cousins and the Vikings offense? That's next on First Things First.
Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. They strive to make financial services work for everyone, not just the wealthy. Robinhood is a non-intimidating way for stock market newcomers to invest for the first time with true confidence. Robinhood is simple and intuitive with a clear design that shows data presented in an easy-to-digest way. Here's why I recommend Robinhood. No commission fees. Other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, but Robinhood doesn't charge commission fees. Trade stocks and keep all of your profits. It's simple. Easy to understand charts and market data. Place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. Robinhood web platform also lets you view stock collections. Collections are like sectors like entertainment, social media, curated categories like female CEOs, and analyst ratings of buy, hold, sell for every stock. You learn by doing it. Learn how to invest as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks and track favorite companies with personalized news feeds. Custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving our listeners a free stock, such as Apple, Ford, or Sprint, to help build your portfolio. Sign up at first.robinhood.com. That's first.robinhood.com.
All right, more Monday Night Football. Let's take it. Vikings in Seattle, fourth quarter. Vikings down 6. Kirk Cousins looking for Kyle Rudolph. They cannot connect on the 4th and goal. Less than 6 minutes to go. Same score. Bobby Wagner blocks the Vikings field goal. The refs would call him for leverage initially, then pick up the flag. Next drive, Russell Wilson doing Russell Wilson things. Watch him scramble for the long gain, which would set up a Chris Carson touchdown. Might have been the most important play of the game. Less than 3 minutes to go. Seahawks now up 14. Kirk Cousins fumbles. Seattle scores. They would go on to win 21-7. They improve to 8-5. Vikings, meanwhile, have lost their last 2 games. They sit at 6-6-1. But, Nick, let's start with Seattle. What do you think? Can this team make a little noise in the postseason?
Absolutely. Absolutely they can. They're going to be the 5 seed. They can't win their division. So they are either going to be playing in the first round the Chicago Bears, who have a coach and a quarterback who have never won a playoff game, or the Dallas Cowboys, who have a coach who hasn't won a playoff game in years and a quarterback who's never won a playoff game. They have the reason Seattle should never rebuild in its current iteration and won't say they are rebuilding, they are retooling, they are reloading, whatever it is because they've got a top 5 coach and a top 5 quarterback. And even though yesterday Russell Wilson had his worst game of the year, to go along with it, the defense is now coming together. I know the Legion of Boom got all the headlines, but Bobby Wagner is a special football player. Bobby Wagner, it's not just the blocked field goal. He was all over the field last night playing every defensive snap. So, yes, this is a team that I don't think anyone wants to see come into their building in the wild card round of the playoffs.
Seattle, even since Pete Carroll's been there, it's nice to see him retool this team. He didn't have to rebuild, and when you have a quarterback, it makes it easier to make that transition from the team they used to be to the team we saw last night on the field. But this is also, I'm not going to overreact because the Vikings are a perfect matchup for Seattle because of the way the speed and movement of their defense against that poor offensive line, the Vikings' inability to run the ball or even attempting running the football, the least rushing attempts since the merger. I mean, 33% of their snaps, are only rushing attempts. So I don't know how you're going to win. It's not that conventional. I don't care how much they change the rules. When you don't run the ball like that and that crowd, that's the #1 home field advantage in the NFL since they opened that stadium. The number of illegal procedures, you cannot play sports effectively when you can't hear. There's so much communication that you have to have and your inability to be able to hear in that stadium. So I'm going to pump my brakes because they're going to have to, as a Fives, they're going to have to go on the road.
Sure.
So on the road, look at Pete Carroll's record, even when they had better teams on the road. So I'm just going to be a little bit, yes, Pete Carroll's done a good job, but I'm just going to let me see those matchups. Where are they going? Because if they have to go, to a
It'll be
place.
Chicago or Dallas.
Okay, if they go to Chicago, like I like Chicago, especially in the cold. Now, they're in the great Northwest, but they don't get that type of cold there, and I don't believe that football team is prepared, especially to be able to try to advance it through the air. Doug Baldwin has been injured all of the year. He missed a lot of training camp, started the season, missed last night's game. So I don't believe without him, they're as effective. He's a really good football player, especially seasoned playoff veteran. So I'm just going to slow down just a little bit.
I just want to make my comments clear. I'm not saying Seattle now put them on Super Bowl watch, and I would not even saying I would pick them to go win that road playoff game. I am saying whoever draws them is going to be bummed about it. Whoever draws them is going to wish they got to the 3 line and got whichever team makes it out of the muck of these half dozen teams fighting for the 6 seed. Seattle, to me, is a dangerous team, even though I agree about the home field advantage and limited, constricted offense at times.
They also have the momentum, having won 4 in a row. But I want to turn our attention now to the Vikings offense. Let's just play a little history for a second. Last year, the Vikings went, what was the record last year?
Last year, they were 13-3.
Who was their quarterback last year?
Case Keenum was their quarterback.
Case Keenum was their quarterback last year. This year, they're not 13-3, and the guy they paid $84 million guaranteed to, Kirk Cousins, some would say has come up short, at least in games where he should have won or in big situations. What has gone so wrong for this Vikings offense and for Kirk Cousins?
For the people who think Kirk Cousins have come up short, call me, and I'll be able to get you straight. Because the way that defense is played, the way the special teams is played, you don't have no running game. If Case Keenum was there, they would have won 2 games. That's what they'd be sitting right now. All right? Because Kirk Cousins has thrown the football. Their passing game, especially Stephon Diggs and Thielen. There's some other reasons when you don't run the football, which I said before as far as rush attempts, 33% of they're only going to rush it, the lowest percentage since the merger. Like, how are you going to win a football game? The defense has not been a top 10 defense, which we had expected. So this is not Kirk Cousins. Don't blame it on the guy with the money. There's a lot of other guys being paid a lot of money out there, too, that no one's talking about. I don't think that their change from Pat Shurmur as an offensive coordinator to John DeFilippo now, because the lack of a tight end presence with Kyle Rudolph only having, I think, 48 catches, and Stephon Diggs having 88 and Thielen having 103. Do you think Kyle Rudolph is supposed to have 50-something less catches? Then no, he should be utilized more. They don't put him down the middle of the field. So there's some other things that have led to, all right? Just don't follow the money. I mean, I watch every Vikings game. I watch how they attack people. And what Pat Shurmur did last year, it was amazing. Offensive line, not protecting Kirk Cousins the way they protected Case. Last year, Case at this time, 20 sacks. Right now, 32 sacks. So it's a different ball game year in and year out in the NFL.
I agree with you that it's inexplicable how little they're using Dalvin Cook. I don't understand. You said they're on pace for the fewest rushes since the merger, or the lowest percentage of rushes since the merger. That doesn't make sense. You are, A, you have a good running back. B, you don't have like a superstar, unbelievable Hall of Fame prime quarterback. Like, even if you think Kirk Cousins good, it doesn't make sense that this would be the team. The other teams on this list, it's like, oh, the 2016 Lions with no running game, the 2011 Lions with Megatron and no running. Like, you have an understanding. I think the run and shoot Oilers are on there at some point. They shouldn't be in this percentages. So I do lay some at the feet of John DeFilippo. But I also think the last 2 weeks, Kirk Cousins has come up short in huge spots. You were playing a game last week against the Patriots. You score 1 touchdown. And then we saw the Patriots.
Did you see that game plan? Did you see what they did? All they did was take away Thielen and Diggs. So that was his fault.
Well, I think that we can spread the blame around. I understand you don't like if people just say it's all on the quarterback.
Well, I know it's not on the quarterback. And when you see the way those game plans are put together, you see how effective he's been throwing the football. You seen the type of throws that Kirk Cousins made. There's more believers in Kirk Cousins. If you watch the games and see the quality of the throws that he makes, people are like, wow, I didn't believe his arm was that strong. Wow, I didn't think he could throw that. If you watch the games and everything, Kirk Cousins, to me, has won more people over when he was in Washington.
Okay. All right. Then you and I are seeing that part differently because he leads the NFL in turnovers. And in their last 2 games with, to me, the playoffs on the line, against New England, a New England team that just got gashed by Ryan Tannehill, they scored 1 touchdown. And yesterday, they were shut out for 59 minutes of that football game. I don't think this is all on his feet. I think the lack of a running game is inexplicable, and the defense has regressed, as C was mentioning. But I don't think he's played to the level they expected this
I don't think there's going to be a stat, but if you give me, I wish there was a track of the top quarterbacks. And what I'm going to do in November and December, I'm going to send them to Gillette. And then I'm going to send them up to Seattle. I wonder how many quarterbacks and what their numbers would have been going to those 2 places back to back. I don't think they'd be too much different than what Kirk Cousins has experienced the last 2 weeks.
All right, let's break there. Take a break. Coming up, can the Cowboys make a Super Bowl run? Jerry Jones thinks so, shockingly. That's next on First Things First. Thursday Night Football returns this week as Phillip Rivers and the Red Hot Chargers face off against Patrick Mahomes and the division-leading Chiefs in a big AFC West showdown. That's going to be good. It all starts at 7:30 Eastern on Fox NFL Network and streaming on Prime Video.
Chargers still very alive for the 1 seed in the AFC, but they have to win on Thursday to make that a possibility.
All right, time for us to go viral. Don't look now, but the Thunder have the best record in the West, and Steven Adams has been a big part of that, averaging career highs in points, rebounds, assists, and American accents. Adams, who is from New Zealand, isn't just working on his game. Like I mentioned, he's working on that accent. Take a look and a listen.
Hello, my name is Steven Adams. You're watching Thunder Basketball. Hello, my name is Steven Adams. You're watching Thunder Basketball.
That's really good. If you know what he sounds like typically, which is like a guy from New Zealand,
sure,
that's really well done. That was shocking. I hadn't seen that or heard that. That was really well done.
Yeah, I was still waiting for his regular voice. I was still waiting around.
You thought he was going to have his both?
Yeah.
No, he was trying to do his intro for their local television broadcast in an American accent. Can you do New Zealand?
You know
Jenna?
what the Brits are saying? What? When she does that accent, sometimes I do the British accent.
Right.
Wow, that's almost, that's really good. It's almost as good as, you know.
That's what they say?
That's what they say. Oh, the Brits call me constantly. Twitter's
okay.
Twitter's lighting up right now.
The Brits?
Yeah.
They just have a group text with all the Brits?
Yeah, the one she lives with.
One chain about Brexit, the other about the lady on TV's accent.
Don't talk about one chain. Time for stories to start your morning. LeBron and D-Wade were the story of the night last night, and King James got some much-needed help to beat the former teammate. Kyle Kuzma dropping 33 points in the win over Miami. Nick, is Kuzma starting to look like the Lakers' best number 2 option?
Sure, guys, see, and he's been their second best player all year.
This is just getting frustrating.
What's getting frustrating?
Just being right.
Oh, okay. All right. Pump the brakes a tad bit, but I do like to give you credit on stuff when you are right. And Kuzma's been your guy since last year with this team. Yeah. Before we were even talking about LeBron going there, he's been without question the second most consistent Laker. Dude, forget Ingram's injury and suspension. Even if Ingram been playing,
right.
Kuzma's better than him right now.
Yeah, I think he's the brightest of all the young players that they had. And last year when they were trying to make the trade for potential free agents like Kawhi, I was just insisting on keeping him. He's going to be a great player. Can shoot the ball from all parts of the court, unselfish, basketball IQ very, very high. Love his game.
33 last night. That's more than Brandon Ingram's scored since high school.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Moving on to the Warriors now. Steph Curry had another big game last night. He scored 38 points in a win over the Timberwolves. Nick, how impressive has Steph been this year?
All right, people got to understand, for a long time, hallowed ground in the NBA was a 50-40-90 club. 50% from the field, 40% from three, 90% from the free throw line. Steph is shooting 11 threes a game, and right now he's in a 50-90 club, something that cannot exist, it feels like, mathematically. He's trying to create it. He's been unbelievable, C.
All right, moving on to the Raiders. The Raiders fired general manager Reggie McKenzie. McKenzie drafted Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack, who are having incredible seasons for not the Raiders. CC, what do you think of this move?
It was inevitable. When they hired John Gruden, they gave him all control. Reggie's head was on the chopping block. Just 2 years ago, he was executive of the year. So he should find a job in the league. He's very, very qualified at what he's done. Let's look at the players that were involved in the trades this offseason. He had nothing to do with those. Those are John Gruden's. So this is a mess. This is one of many moves that we'll look back on in years and be like, wow, why didn't we see this coming? The Raiders, man, it's a disaster. And this is just the beginning.
And it's not often a guy loses his job and you're happy for him, but I'm happy for Reggie McKenzie because the way he was being undercut, the way Gruden was talking trash on all the players he acquired, and the cowardly way in which they moved on from him. Sent out a team statement, nobody signed it. Like, was it from the owner? Was it from Gruden? Who was it from? Reggie McKenzie did a good
Gruden said he
job.
went home after the game. He wasn't a part of the meeting and everything. But Reggie said it was his friend and everything. Oh, he said, my friend, and I'll always be a Raider. Let me know. When you get rid of me, you can forget me being with you for wherever. You'll always be. Let me tell you what you
And finally, Bill Belichick took responsibility for the final play of the Dolphins game. He said, quote, "It starts with me," and he had Gronk out there in case of a Hail Mary. CC, you buying Belichick's Hail Mary explanation?
Yeah, it's exactly what happened. I mean, he told us exactly what, this is one of the, yes, he told us exactly what happened. I thought they were going to throw a long pass. He thought they were going to throw a long pass and go for the tip back and then try to run and advance the ball after that. So, no, he told us exactly what. He's the guy. He made a mistake, and he's actually moved on from it.
Here's the only, you say he made a mistake. He said, the other thing he said yesterday was he'd do it again. So I don't think he thinks he made a mistake. That's the most troubling part of this, right?
Well, it's not troubling, the probability of this happening ever again. So I could see why he'd say, yes, I would do it again, compared to opening the door for all the media to say, oh, no, I wouldn't do it again. I would do it. No, because I can just end it. I did it that way. It didn't work. If we do it again, I'm going to do it. He's the greatest coach that's ever coached. He made a mistake. I'm glad he said, yes, I knew he made a mistake. That's why I was wanting to see what he was going to say at the press conference. I knew it was a mistake, but to say, will it happen again? It's never happened before, and I believe it won't happen again. So that's the reason why he said he would do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree he made a mistake. I agree he's the greatest coach ever. And maybe you're saying he believes he made a mistake. He just won't say it publicly. I don't know what the downside to saying it publicly would be, to say, listen, I screwed, just like Brady said.
He said he made a mistake.
No, he didn't. No. He said he would do it again. He didn't say it was a mistake. He explained why.
He said
Gronk
he was to
out there.
blame.
Right. I'm to blame because he said he was to blame for everything. I'm just saying I don't think he feels having Gronk out there was the wrong move. I think he's saying I was to blame for how the play went down.
This is what I can guarantee you that he can say. In open space, Drake, does he have another guy on the team that would have been out there for a jump ball and an open field tackle? There probably wasn't a guy. Would have Josh Gordon made that tackle? Bill Belichick, I don't know if he would have made that tackle. All right, now, we'd much rather have Josh out there because he's a better athlete. So I understand what Bill is saying. He said it starts with me and ends with me, all right? So, but if I had to do it over again, I would do it. But it wouldn't get to Gronk. He would change up how they did. It wouldn't get to Gronk. So when you play this game long enough, you coach this game long enough, you're going to make some mistakes.
No doubt.
He made a mistake. It didn't cost them the game.
Well, that's the thing he said that is absolutely correct. And this point I was trying to harp on yesterday is that was the final play of the game. And if that play doesn't happen, they don't lose. But there was a bunch of plays leading up to that put them in a position where a play that had never happened before could beat them. If they're up by 9, obviously that play doesn't matter at all. And so that part I thoroughly agree with. It was uncharacteristic for the first half and the second half to end with what I would consider mental errors, if you will, by the greatest quarterback I've ever seen and the greatest coach I've ever seen. He's
also the same guy that told Malcolm Butler in a practice at the Super Bowl 3 days before, they ran a slant, a smash route. Listen, the receiver caught it. He told him, let's go back, let's rewind it. They're going to run this in the Super Bowl. And Malcolm Butler in the Super Bowl, they ran the same play. He intercepts it. Why? Because the greatest coach ever hadn't prepared for that moment. So he's got hundreds and hundreds of those little moments.
No doubt.
And yes, he's going to have that one right there, but I don't think his career is going to be dictated by that last play in Miami.
So you don't think Belichick will be fired? Okay, I just want to. Okay, so we're good.
Yeah.
Let's talk Cowboys. What a turnaround for this team. A few weeks ago, Jason Garrett was all but fired. Today, they're the hottest team in the NFL, winners of 5 in a row. And Garrett's job is about as safe as Cece's. And after beating the Eagles on Sunday, Jerry Jones says this team can win in the postseason. Cowboys head to Indy this week to try and lock up the NFC East. See, you agree with Jerry Jones that the Cowboys can win in the postseason?
Jerry's saying a lot of things lately I agree with.
That's dangerous.
But he's saying a lot.
It is, you're right. There's such a high volume.
Okay,
Some
so
are gonna
there's a filter, and I'm catching some of it. But I feel you, Jerry, and the reason why, because if you look at the teams, let's look at the top-rated teams. The Saints played them. Rams, we see what they did against Chicago. And I know Dallas feels like they got just as good a defense. The Bears, Cowboys are third, that team, Seattle, and the Vikings. There ain't no team in there they're afraid of. From a defensive standpoint, they match up well with all those teams. Is there anybody in there Dallas can't run the ball against?
No.
No. Okay.
Seattle, they probably have the most trouble, but no.
Right. The Saints, they got the best run defense, but they ran it against them before. So, and they faced them in the head-to-head. So, yes, when you just look at one part of the ball, absolutely, because you can contain any of those offenses. You're not afraid of them. And the way that Dak is playing and the way that Zeke, and now they found some type of passing game, they match up with any defense there, unless they have to go to Chicago. And I just believe that because of that win, it would be a ball control type of game. But I believe Chicago presents a lot of problems in Chicago for the Cowboys. So Jerry is right. They match up well. They are peaking at the right point. I believe that Amari Cooper, he's going to start to generate more attention as far as coverage. I still believe this is not some hot streak that he's on. They're going to throw the ball to him, and he's going to be one of the best receivers in the league. But right now, you defend Dallas with 7 or 8 defenders. And right now, when you watch that film, you better put 2 people over on Amari Cooper's side of the field. So you're starting to run out of bodies on the defense.
Running out of people.
So how they go about game planning Scott Lanahan, it's going to be a lot easier these last 3 games than it has been for him in the season.
And that numbers issue is why you talked about yesterday moving forward for Dallas. If they could get a real tight end, then you all of a sudden have real legitimate matchup problems across the board. You mentioned you think the toughest thing for them would be going to Chicago. Dallas would love to have that problem because the only way that could happen is if it's in the NFC Championship game. Because they're going to, neither one of them is going to be the one or the two. So they sign Dallas and Jerry up for that and see what happens. But that's why these last 2 games and the way in which they won them is so important. You have against the Saints and then the first 3 quarters against Philly, defensive performances that are good enough to beat anybody. The 4 quarter, the one touchdown they gave up in the first 3 quarters against Philly was after a Dak pick where they were set up on the goal line essentially. And then the one thing we hadn't seen from Dallas all year, a potent, high-flying passing attack, that's their most vivid memory. It's the 4th quarter in overtime, against Philly. So you have in the last 2 games, you say, okay, if we just take the best parts of each of our games, Zeke was consistent in both games. The defense was excellent for 7 quarters. The passing game was as good as it's been in 2 years in that 4th quarter against Philly. Now, I know Philly's undermanned regardless. Like, you say, okay, we put it all together. We're as good as anybody. Like, that is what they can convince themselves.
One of the things I was really concerned with the Cowboys, how would this young team respond after the euphoric win against the Saints? And you could see, they could have played better, but in the first 3 quarters of that
defense couldn't have played better.
I mean, that was you knew that was a good football team who had handled some type of success. So Coach Mangini talks about managing when you lose, managing when you win. So that, to me, is a team that's learning how to win. And as you could see, late in the game, young players making big plays, that type of energy and everything is infectious, and the momentum of it late in the season, I believe, carries on strong week to week.
Earlier in the season, we placed a lot of blame on Jason Garrett and how he was managing this team. Now that they've won 5 in a row, how much credit do you give Jason Garrett for the way they're playing?
micro and the macro, I want to give him a ton of credit. In the micro, things like that 4th and 1. I'm going to keep harping on that because it's not fair if we harp on the 4th and 2 he doesn't go for in overtime against, I think it was the Texans, where he punted and they end up losing that game. And then in overtime on a 4th and 1 in a spot, I think 28 of 32 coaches kick the field goal there. You're inside 4 minutes. You can go up in overtime. You have a great defense. And instead, he tried to go for the kill. And then in the macro, in this 5-game winning streak, Zeke's touching the ball 31 times per game. He's giving you 115 on the ground and 55 through the air per game. So one of the big criticisms early was, and I know Jason Garrett's not the offensive coordinator, but it ends at his feet, why isn't Zeke getting the ball more? He has the last month plus, and they've been winning accordingly to go along with Amari and everything else. And the fact that he had whatever C has talked about as far as talking to Saban and talking to the coaches and the relation, whatever he is doing mentally for Amari Cooper, which you've said is very important, from Sanjay Lal, the wide receivers coach, on up to the owner in Jerry Jones, that has obviously worked very well for him.
Well, we missed something on this team, and we just thought Dallas was going to be a playoff team. We thought they'd be contending, but we didn't consider this offseason. We talked about the players. We know they made a mistake as far as Dez, when they didn't offer him some type of contract, and bringing in Allen Hurns thinking he was going to be the #1 guy. They made a mistake. They did not have enough firepower in that room. But where he didn't make a mistake was they changed 7 coaches. But we as reporters, we missed that. We didn't think or bake it into how long is it going to take for this team to be able to adjust with this new coaching staff. 7 coaches, and they changed the offensive line coach during the season. So that's 8 new coaches that this team of 53 guys, that's an adjustment not only for the staff, not only for the organization, but for every player. How does this coach going to coach me? And then they trade for Amari Cooper. So the criticism is because we didn't realize they were making an adjustment with those huge staff changes. We should have been thinking about that. We didn't, and we made a mistake by over-criticizing because we over-analyzed the Cowboys. Jason Garrett is a good coach for the Cowboys. He knows the heartbeat of the Cowboys, but it took an adjustment with those type of staff changes. We just didn't see it.
Well, they've got the momentum. Everyone's adjusting to the staff changes. They've won 5 in a row. This is a good time for them to be putting it all together. Take a break. Coming up, talk some Eagles. Is Carson Wentz the reason for the Eagles' struggles this year? That's
I'm getting ready
next.
to text some
First things
people and see
first.
if I can make some staff changes.
Oh.
No.
Oh, no. I support this. We're thinking of the same person.
Back here, first things first, with that guy, former head coach Eric Mangini.
morning.
What's
What up,
up,
brother?
Coach?
Good to see you.
Yeah, you know,
Good to see you.
feeling dangerous.
Dangerous.
Woke up feeling dangerous. You know what's going to happen today?
I love it.
Coach is the best.
Baker, the
Coach
best.
is the best.
Let's talk some Philadelphia Eagles. Apparently, the hangover
Did she call
is
you a
real. The defending Super Bowl champs are all but eliminated from winning the NFC East at 6-7. They'll be lucky to sneak in as the final wildcard team. Carson Wentz said their slow starts to games have been absolutely frustrating as he continues to have an up and down season. Coach, start with you. Where are we on Carson Wentz after the season the Eagles have had so far?
When you look at his numbers are actually better than they were last season. And sometimes this happens. And sometimes it happens where you struggle on the road. Sometimes it happens where you struggle with the first drive of the second half, or you have difficulties in the third quarter, and you work to try to figure out what that is. But the flip side of that is when you start pressing for those answers, oftentimes it has a negative effect as opposed to a positive effect. Maybe it's a function of them having to give him plays that he's inherently comfortable with, dress him up a little bit differently, try to get him started to get him out of this pattern that he's had. I don't think it's something that's going to be consistent throughout the course of his career, and it hasn't been consistent over the first 3 years where he's always been a slow starter.
So listen, here's the Eagles are scoring 2 points on average in the first quarter. It's the worst in the league by a decent margin. So they are starting as slow, in fact, slower than any team in the league. What we have seen throughout the league this year, and maybe any year, but just talking about this year, is even some bad offenses get off to a good start. We talked early in the year about the first Raider game. The plays were scripted, first drive works well, and then once there's any adjustment, they can't make it. What I'm curious from a coaching perspective is if you are clearly struggling, not in third quarter, second quarter, but to open football games, is there something they can do during the week to get them more in rhythm? Because later in games, they've been fine. Like, the team hasn't been a disaster offensively in any quarter except for the first quarter. How much of that is the game plan leading into the week? Because once you get in the flow of the game, they've been not as good as they were last year, but they've been a fine offense.
Yeah, you try to look at, okay, what did we do last year? What are we doing differently this year? What are teams doing differently against us? What is Carson comfortable with? Is it a function? And this happens with players, too. I've had defensive backs who needed to get a good start early, so you try to call a blitz so they could get involved. Otherwise, they'd sometimes go in the tank. And you see it all the time. I'm sure Cris knows this. Certain wide receivers, if they don't get the ball in the first series, they're not the same guy, and they get frustrated. So it may be a function of giving him certain plays that just get him going, get him a little bit of comfort, a little bit of rhythm, and they're trying. I promise you they have addressed this. They've addressed it multiple times. They just haven't hit on the right answer yet.
This is about support staff. Like a lot of these questions and everything, I'm going to look at what's around. I'm not going to look at the individual as much. And let's just look at this offseason. Carson, we know, coming off a serious knee injury after having that MVP-type performance that he had last season. The emotion of watching another quarterback win the Super Bowl, all the rehab this offseason. I did like the fact that he started the season, not win the first game of the season. He allowed them to play to give himself a couple more weeks. He didn't rush himself. But when you look at who he thought he was going to be throwing to, he thought Mike Wallace was going to be there, right? The other receiver, Alshon Jeffrey, he's been hurt. He came in hurt. He had a shoulder problem. Nelson Aguilar, he didn't grow his game from last year. The only dependable targets he's been is Zach Ertz. That's it. So they felt so bad about their wide receiving core that they made a trade for Golden Tate because they thought Darren Sproles, Wallace, Jeffrey, they thought they had some explosive players that they could move the ball. He needs a running back. All right? They need a running back. They're the only team in the NFC East. Look, they got Geis. He got injured. Then they got Adrian Peterson. You see the stud they have in Barkley. Here, we know about Zeke. Yep. Man, if you're going to be in the NFC East for the last 30 years, I got drafted into that division in '87, you got to be able to run the football. The Eagles, they kind of missed out on that in their offseason, kind of, scouting themselves how important a running game was going to be. When they lost Blunt in free agency, how much value, how much punch he brought to that offense. So for me, it's been a season of not being able to support the franchise quarterback. I believe he's one of the bright young quarterbacks. He is the stud that we thought he would be. He can lead my franchise if I had a franchise as the quarterback. I think he's growing as a quarterback. I think that we're getting into this instant analysis of all these young quarterbacks like right now. Like we have to put them in a vacuum. Are they a franchise quarterback? Are they not a franchise quarterback? But I think this one is easily answered by Carson and what he has shown me.
Yeah, and the tough part with Carson is not knowing what he'll do in the playoffs, and we missed out that opportunity, or miss out on the opportunity to see him in that role. And going back to this first quarter problem, it's some guys, as the game unfolds, as they start to understand what the defense is doing to them, they're different guys, and sometimes offensive coordinators will try to do too much, and you're trying to justify the genius label that you got the year before with shifts and motions and multiple personnel groups, and it ends up being detrimental as opposed to a positive thing.
And that's what I was getting at, because last year this was, across all categories, one of the 3 highest scoring first quarter teams in the league. But the big change is the personnel C mentioned, and you talk about the running game. They, I think, thought they had the running game addressed with Jay Ajayi, and then he blows out his knee, and maybe they overvalued him even pre-injury, slightly undervalued LeGarrette Blount. But the other is the coaching changes. Like, they lost their offensive coordinator, they lost their quarterback's coach as well. And so all of a sudden, Carson Wentz, you said statistically he's having a better year than last year. It's certainly at least the same. Like, you could parse it, but he's not, there hasn't been some major drop-off in his play. It's the running game. The offensive line has been, to me, much, much weaker than last year. And the coaching staff, I think it's hard to evaluate fairly in this short of a time frame, but they're not being as effective, certainly, as they were from a coaching perspective last season.
And I guess when I was looking at it, when you see the numbers that are similar with all those changes,
sure,
then you grade it on a little bit of a curve because, like Cris said, all the challenges he's had to be able to play at that level, it's harder.
All right. The pointing made me think you were going to say something.
I was going to say something, but I'm here to support people and lift people up today. Not here to drag people down.
Coach, stick around. Coming out,
I'm
what's
curious
gone
what that
so
was gonna
wrong
be.
for Kirk Cousins and the Vikings offense? So was I. That's why I stopped. Next on First Things First. Back here with Coach Mangini talking Monday Night Football. Vikings, Seahawks, fourth quarter. Vikings down 6. Kirk Cousins looking for Kyle Rudolph. They can't connect on 4th and goal. Less than 6 minutes to go. Same score. Bobby Wagner blocking the Vikings field goal. Refs would call him for leverage initially, then pick up the flag. Next drive, Russell Wilson. Watch it. This is what he does. Scrambling for the long gain, which would set up a Chris Carson touchdown. Less than 3 minutes to go now. Seahawks up 14. Kirk Cousins fumbles. Seattle would score. They go on to win 21-7, improving to 8-5. Vikings have now lost 2 in a row. They sit at 6-6-1. Coach, what do you think about this Seahawks team? Let's start there. Can they make some noise in the postseason?
Yeah, I think they can. When you look at them defensively, they've done a good job in terms of giveaway, takeaway, and that's always been something that Pete's defenses have done well overall. Points allowed, they've been very effective, and they're running the ball, and they're committing to running the ball
really well.
They're number 1 in the league right now in per game rushing. So you combine those things and the element of that Russell Wilson brings, where he can make plays and he can extend plays. Obviously, last night that interception was as bad a decision as you could possibly make.
At the end of the first half.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure he wants to have that one back, but. They've won on the road. They've won at home. They're hot right now, and that to me is a big part of who wins in the playoffs is how you're playing at the end of the season, and Seattle's starting to peak at the right time.
Seattle's got a really good resume right now. They started the season losing at Denver and at Chicago. Since then, they're 8-3, with the 3 losses being close games to the Rams, who they might get again if they're able to win their first playoff game, and a game against the Chargers. So they don't have a bad loss in the mix really all year. And starting off the year losing in Denver and in Chicago, there's no shame in that. And the way they have weathered multiple storms, from the change in the secondary to having Earl Thomas there, but he didn't want to be there, and then he breaks his leg. Yesterday, I understand offensively, it was a 6-0 game late into the fourth quarter. So offensively, they weren't good, but no Doug Baldwin. You mentioned he's been in and out all year, and prior to last night, Russell Wilson had been playing very well. They're going to be playing in the first round of the playoffs. They're going to be the 5 seed. It's one of the things, like, there is not a lot of the playoff picture we know, but we know Seattle's not going to win their division. They're not going to fall to the 6th line. They're going to be the 5 seed. So they're going to be either going to Chicago or going to Dallas. If they end up getting Dallas, I know Dallas is playing really well right now, but I don't think Jason Garrett and Dak Prescott want any part of Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson coming in there with all that playoff experience. And as great as Chicago's defense has been, I think Seattle would go into that game saying, how many points can this offense put up on us realistically? So they'd be underdogs in those games, but they absolutely would be dangerous. And then if they were able to win one of those, they could get a team for the 3rd time in the Rams. And we know how tough that is when you have a divisional opponent who you've already played twice in a season.
Pete Carroll's one of the best coaches in the league. He's done a tremendous job of transitioning this team from, no, I'm not going to rebuild. And when you have someone like Russell, you don't have to rebuild, but slow start to the season, so expectations there in Seattle, they're real low. So now in his last 11 games, they're 8-3 in these last games, since Pete has been there. Regardless of this team, the Super Bowl champion team, or the team that went to the Super Bowl, they've been a 500 at best team away from home. Like, they are not a great team. They are a different team on the road. And now they're challenged to be able to score the ball. I'm worried about, again, and they mocked me before when I said the receivers were pedestrian. I said they weren't the main course. Right now, they're able to run the ball. So I like the way they've changed their overall football identity. They're a physical, fast defense, and they are a physical offense that they are going to run the ball and try to protect Russ. They're challenged to be able to score points. So, and they're going to be on the road. So I'm just going to say I like what I see, but I'm just going to pump my brakes a little bit and not overreact to last night, a Vikings team who's one of the worst as far as rush attempts, and that wasn't a good matchup for the Vikings. So I expected Seattle to be able to win that game.
And when you watch Seattle, the level of intensity that they played with last night versus Minnesota, it just looked dramatically different. I do like the fact that Pete stressed at the beginning of the season, we're going to run the ball. And he stayed committed to it. And it hasn't always been overly effective, but they've stayed committed to that philosophy. And then defensively and as a team, he always preaches competitiveness, trying to create turnovers. And that's been another area that they've been very effective with. And I don't think many people are going to be excited about having to deal with them in the playoffs.
One thing Pete does, too, is he identifies defensively what they can do. And they try to play a system where they're only going to play a few things, but the way they're going to play it, and they're going to play it at such a high level, you're going to know exactly what they're doing defensively, but they do it with such speed and with such confidence because they're only doing a few things. But he's got this defense to be able to play a couple things, play it very, very well, and that's why they've been able to win 8 out of the last 11.
What about the Vikings? What's going on with Kirk Cousins in this offense this year? Why have they struggled?
It's been frustrating to watch, and when you think about the loss of Tony Sparano in the preseason, and the things that Tony brought to this team, not just as the offensive line coach, but the type of person that he was, this sounding board that he was for the head coach, and look, those things are hard to get past, and I know we're much further down in the season, but you add the expectations of bringing the #1 free agent in Kirk Cousins and all that he was supposed to bring to this really good team. Expectations are hard to deal with too, and trying to live up to that, it's harder than people think. I don't see offensively a cohesiveness between what the head coach wants and what the offensive coordinator is doing, and that seems to be coming to a head, or maybe it has come to a head. And
what do you mean? I think I know what you mean, but explain, like, who Mike Zimmer wants to be and who John DeFilippo has them being this year.
Yeah, it just seems that when you hear Mike Zimmer talk about what type of team, the physical team that he wants, the ball control offense, the mentality of what I envision his Minnesota Vikings look like, that's not really what this team has been. And I don't know if that's a disconnect between the two coaches. And look, he's had a couple different coordinators there, but it just doesn't seem like they're seeing things eye to eye.
I know you were on the show, I think, the day after Kirk Cousins announced they were signing him, or shortly thereafter, and you talked about how they're going to have to. They were 13-3 last year, and they were in the NFC Championship game. And you talked about how, okay, like, for the Vikings, the window is right now and immediately, and a lot of that, fairly or unfairly, is going to fall on number 8 shoulders because that's their big offseason acquisition. And this is what I think. I put this together because I knew you were on here. Here's Kirk Cousins this year, one of these blind reveals. Here's Kirk Cousins this year, and next to him as a quarterback, we would all agree those numbers are almost identical. Like, the Cousins, slightly better completion percentage, slightly worse yards per pass. Aside from it, almost identical. Show who the other guy is. So that's Case Keenum last year with the Vikings. And I understand there's extenuating circumstances. I get that it's not exactly apples to apples. But in your eyes, when the Vikings signed Kirk Cousins, it wasn't to get the same quarterback production that they were getting last year.
No, when you pay that kind of money, and I've said this before, to whom much is given, much is expected. And they expect him to be able to go in to Seattle against an aggressive defense, in a hostile environment, and be able to produce at a high level. And he should. And it's the rest of the team looks around as well and says, okay, they paid this guy so much money. They all want credit for that 13-3 season too. They want to be paid for the things that they contributed to as well earlier on, and now the organizationally, they've committed these resources to Kirk Cousins. He's not producing much better than Case Keenum did, and I'm sure guys are looking around going, what did we do?
Well, the one thing the graphic doesn't tell you, you're trying to compare one quarterback play to other quarterback play, but it didn't talk about the team. Football is the ultimate team sport. Case Keenum, what did he have? Turnover margin. Did they win that? Yes. Defense, were they in the top 5?
Yes.
I think they were a top 2.
Top 2.
All across the board. So now the graphic don't tell you that. Top 5 defense. When we thought Kirk Cousins, when he was going there, we baked in Kirk Cousins with a top 5 defense.
Sure.
They're not a top 5 defense. I mean, you would think some type of mentality. They have Dalvin Cook coming back off of injury. He's a high-round draft pick. They're going to run the ball. Oh, so now we have the team that runs the ball the least percentage since the merger. 1970? Really? Why wasn't that in the graphic? Because that would distort. I wonder what kind of record they would have or what kind of percentage of.
So last year they ran the ball 47% of the time, to your point.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of Case Keenum would he be looking like then if he was on a team that was like that. No, they wouldn't have made the playoffs. All right, they would have been fighting to be 500, and that's the story. If you don't run the football, if you don't support your quarterback, we can talk about the money, but I can go all around the league and show you units where the guy's making, oh man, that guy's making a bunch of money. Oh, they're not playing really well. Kirk Cousins is part of the solution of what they had. The offensive line and Tony Sperano, they never recovered from. They had a couple injuries up front. That offensive line is one of the weaker offensive lines in the NFL, and it's the weakest unit on their team.
Why do you think, because I know you follow this team as closely as you follow any team in the league, why do you think they're not running the ball? Because Dalvin Cook's a good player. It's not like their yards per carry are dead last in the NFL, that they just simply can't do it. It's more of a won't than can't.
Part of the reason is we got a bunch of idiots on TV and radio saying, we need the next Sean McVay. You know how you find the next Sean McVay? Throwing the ball and being sexy. All right, so they've developed their wide receivers on the outside. Everyone wants I'm the next Sean McVay. When you don't run the football in the NFL, you're going to be playing left-handed. You're going to be playing uphill compared to playing downhill. So all the people out there, the next Sean McVay. Yeah. Those guys are hard to find.
Throwing the ball and being sexy.
Oh.
Thought it was a smoother sentence
That was a
for that.
cliffhanger. Frolic and what, Jenna?
What do you mean? I lobbed it. You always lob to me.
You lobbed it.
Okay, do it again.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Throw the ball.
Throw the ball in. Being sexy.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.